Nós celebramos uma das maiores invenções do século XX, o herói dos quadrinhos. Nós falamos com os criadores, escritores e artistas que andaram por mundos surpreendentes onde grandes personagens realizam ações heróicas. Nós falamos com vocês, fãs, que votaram aos milhares em seus favoritos. Assim, aqui estão os super-heróis dos quadrinhos.
That's amazing.
Esse é Stan Lee, o padrinho dos quadrinhos modernos e criador do Homem-Aranha. Falaremos dele depois.
I hope so.
Em 1929, os quadrinhos eram só tiras em jornais, onde nosso primeiro herói nasceu. Como um herói de quadrinhos tradicional, ele tem pouco a seu favor. Ele não tem nenhum superpoder, não usa uniforme. E tem um grupo muito estranho de amigos. George Remy, um jovem jornalista, fala com seu editor.
What? A comic strip? Your hero? Magnificent physique? Powerful? Handsome?
He's a small boy, actually.
Are you mad?
He will have adventures all over the world.
But you've never left Belgium. Ce n'est pas possible.
O editor não acha isso possível. Em termos de marketing, Tintin é a estrela dos quadrinhos. Traduzido em mais de 50 idiomas, mais de 200 milhões de cópias vendidas. Um best-seller por mais de meio século.
The great appeal of Tintin is that Tintin is like a blank slate. He's a universal character. He's very good and plucky. He helps people. And of course, Tintin is surrounded by wonderful, manic, interesting characters that offset the fact that Tintin himself is a Boy Scout. He's a goody-goody character.
It's a sort of rather basic heroism, sort of day-to-day heroism. The hero doing good, you know, righting wrong.
He's a boy, but he's of an uncertain age. He doesn't have any parents. He doesn't have any visible means of support. His life is quite fantastic. He can jet off at a moment's notice to anywhere in the world. He's brave, he's intelligent. Male or female readers can both sort of slot themselves into that character.
Tintin, of course, is Belgian. And he could so easily have just been a very strange, quirky, local success story and not crossed all these barriers, all these frontiers and become a world phenomenon. There's something about the humanity of the character that I think talks to everybody. And however much we have our fantasies about being Batman or Superman or Spider-Man, which talk about much darker things, Tintin is the innocent abroad. And in that sense, he can relate to every nationality and every culture very easily. Hergé had a world vision.
Hergé always did his homework whenever he did a story, but of course he didn't go there himself. He took time, he was a perfectionist, everything is pretty spot on, and this of course gives it a great authenticity.
Well, Tintin's first companion, in fact his essential sort of comedy stooge, if you like, was Snowy the dog. Snowy was the comedian. He was always the one getting into trouble. But clearly there's not a great deal of scope for conversation here. There's not going to be a lot of repartee if possible. And Hergé quickly had to bring in other characters to give Tintin an ensemble, a cast to bounce off. And amongst his characters, the most important clearly is Captain Haddock.
But he's also a high liability friend. He sets fire to the lifeboat which they're trying to escape in, and this goes on. This is, you know, one of many occasions.
Captain Haddock was brought in really to add quite sort of controversial elements, such as booze, for example, and he drinks, of course, quite merrily.
C'est nous, les gars de la marine.
He swears all over the place.
Hergé himself had great fun doing that by using a thesaurus and just opening it at random to find the most outlandish words.
Also in Tintin, of course, you have the famous Thompson twins in their kind of Magritte-like bowler hats.
Two Scotland Yard detectives were caught on a photograph in a French magazine some years before, and this image was clearly something which Hergé remembered because they looked just like the Thompsons.
And then, of course, you have the brilliant Professor Calculus with all his mad inventions, a genius who isn't all here, shall we say.
In the very first images of Tintin, which appeared in January 1929, he didn't have a quiff. But it's only on about page 8 that he jumps into an open Mercedes sports car puts his foot on the accelerator and speeds off to avoid a police aeroplane which is following him. And it's the speed of the open sports car which blows his hair back into the famous quiff. And from that moment onwards, he kept the quiff, regardless.
One of the things perhaps that people don't realize, all over the world, in the morning, guys are looking in the mirror, reaching for a bit of hair gel, and are giving themselves a little quiff to make themselves look different. They're making themselves actually into Tintin without knowing it, because Tintin's quiff symbolizes that bit of spirit and adventurousness and good-heartedness and lack of conformity, if you like, that comics give people.
Tintin faz tudo isso e sem poderes especiais. Ele espera e vê o que acontece. Agora, Nova York, a casa espiritual de muitos super-heróis. Aqui, o próximo personagem descobre uma luva antiga usada por mulheres poderosas ao longo da história, como Joana d'Arc. Ela permaneceu adormecida durante anos, mas em tempos de crise como agora, é dada a uma mulher com grande força e determinação para fazer justiça.
She's a New York City police detective.
Beautiful and athletic.
Strong.
She's a cool chick.
She's no different than you or I.
Who gave me this 20-inch waist?
Sarah Pazzini is a New York City police detective, and she has this incredible circumstance thrust upon her and turns her life upside down.
She finds this alien gauntlet, and it sort of starts controlling her life and taking her in different ways. Kind of a symbiotic relationship, but the thing has a mind of its own, so it sort of leads her in different directions.
She's got this great responsibility with this Witchblade gauntlet that's been put upon her. Not only a responsibility in day-to-day life to do good with it, but a responsibility of history as well. This is an ancient weapon that has done many things good and bad throughout history, and she is now the present-day wielder of this.
I mean, yeah, she could have some little knife or something very delicate, but it wouldn't go with the whole thing. If it was a man, he'd have that. So I think they're putting it very much just because she's female, why shouldn't she have a big weapon too?
When I first started drawing Witchblade, about half of the fan mail that I got was from women. And that's almost unheard of. It's usually 10% at max for most books, even if it is a female lead. And, you expect, most of the people reading the books are going to be 14-year-old boys.
I like Witchblade basically because it's essentially a female, very strong character, and I really like the storylines that they have. She's got a lot to deal with, a lot of conflict. She's just very strong, and you don't see that much. I mean, sure, she's sexy, which almost all the female characters are, and they're geared towards men, obviously. But this one actually has a personality and real-life situations type of things, things that actually appeal to women.
The fact that she's female is, is just cool to draw, but she's a cool chick.
Witchblade representa um novo estilo de quadrinhos de mulheres más. Escrito e desenhado primeiramente para homens, mas diferente de muitos quadrinhos tradicionais, eles têm uma grande quantidade de leitoras jovens e modernas.
It does dawn very much from the Witchblade that you can be sexy and yet you can be very strong. Now you can look sexy as you like, but you're doing it very much for yourself. You don't need men. And she always wins the day, which I think is great. I mean, we all like to see that.
Just like Superman is a handsome, overly buff, heroic figure, for the guys, Sarah is our idealized version of ourselves in our fantasy world of what we'd like to be. Strong, physically attractive, always right, always making the right decisions.
They do criticise them for having big chests, small waists. But to be honest, I like the sexy image. I like the extremeness of it. To have the look and still win the day, be strong characters, be women on their own, because a lot of them, they're not tagging around with some guy. They are very much their own women. She is the real superhero.
At its core, it's female empowerment. It takes a strong individual to wield this ancient weapon.
Para o nosso próximo herói, nós vamos ao Japão, onde quadrinhos são um grande negócio. No Japão, eles são chamados de mangá, que pode ser traduzido por quadrinhos irresponsáveis. O ano é 2019 e nosso herói é um garoto, o primeiro personagem japonês a ser uma sensação mundial.
Tell us your secret, Akira. You won't talk? Give me that. Hey, Akira! No! Hey, Tetsuo! I have Akira's power.
Akira is about a secret government project to create human weapons. They want to use psychic children as human bombs. And this gets caught up in Tokyo after World War III in a conspiracy by the military to seize control. But there's a Pandora's box aspect as well. One of the children who are being used as experimental test subjects is not a polite, obedient little boy, and his powers run amok, and it turns out the government can't control him. Akira is a symbol of ultimate power. Everybody wants it, but they don't necessarily know how to control it. And he's something that all the characters in the comic are fighting over. They think if they can get him, they can become masters of the world.
O cenário é Tóquio, 20 anos à frente. A cidade foi detonada por um garoto, Akira, que destrói tudo à sua volta e não é controlado por ninguém.
Manga and Japanese science fiction in general does have this morbid obsession with the destruction of cities, and I think it's some sort of psychological hangover from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they do really, really have this fear of chaos and this obsession with chaos.
The undeniable appeal of Akira is its incredible intense energy. It has got a tremendous pulse beat racing through this animation, unlike anything you've seen in animation before.
Deep down, it's also about what it's like growing up in Japan when you speak a different language to your parents, when you're actually physically different from your parents because you've got better protein in your diet, when you're discovering that the country in which you live was on the wrong side in a war that was lost before you were born.
I think it appeals to girls a lot as well. For some reason, girls also love the violence in Akira. I think it's exciting, and it's not as bad as some of the Japanese mangas, but it's still exciting, and there are lots of nice-looking boys as a character.
Following the success of the Akira movie, there's been a discovery across Europe of manga.
A indústria de quadrinhos japonesa é a maior do mundo e movimenta 6 bilhões de dólares. E é do tamanho de todas as outras indústrias de quadrinhos juntas. Uma de suas heroínas mais vendidas é uma dona de casa de meia-idade, e nenhum assunto é deixado para trás em suas histórias.
Pataliro, which is about the young prince of an imaginary kingdom whose bodyguard is a gay version of James Bond.
They were a perfect, rebellious form of comics for young people to adopt.
Alien 9, which is about a school where you have alien monitors whose job it is to clear up all the alien invaders who are turning up on the playground.
There's now a huge boom of interest in manga internationally. The market seems to be almost opening up to this because it is such a rich storytelling form.
Oishi Kanke, a one-man A-team chef who saves corporate shindigs when they run out of food. Lee-Man Gambler Mouse, which is about the well-known sport of mouse racing. A Hallelujah 2 boy. No easy way to describe this unless you just want to say Team Jesus. Gangsters, but also gay. Cursed by the mask of an Aztec death god.
Quadrinhos não são só para crianças. Há um grande mercado de quadrinhos de segunda mão com preços altamente inflacionados. Nos últimos 5 anos, os quadrinhos foram um dos melhores investimentos do mercado. Assim, para os bastante ricos, aqui está como gastar $1 milhão em exatamente 1 minuto, começando agora.
Now. Captain America fighting Adolf Hitler, $9,250.
The first superhero group, in pretty nice shape, I would say $30,000. In nice condition, $15,000.
One of the more classic covers, approximately $5,000.
Was the first appearance of Superman, $125,000.
Price on this book is $2,000.
First issue of Superman #1 in near mint condition, $175,000.
X-Men 1, approximately $9,500.
Mint condition, $125,000.
Wolverine, first appearance in Hulk 181, price is $1,500.
Detective 27, which featured the first Batman in exceptional condition, $500,000.
Price $750, $575, $200.
This is the first comic that Batman and Superman were in together. This copy goes for around $11.85.
This is a Witchblade signed copy of #1. I'll let you have it for $40.
1962, o peso da Guerra Fria. Dr. Bruce Banner, cientista nuclear, trabalha numa experiência secreta fazendo armas nucleares e é sabotado por Igor, um agente duplo russo, e Banner é irradiado. Paranoia da Guerra Fria.
I declare, these Russian nukes are aimed at us.
Stan Lee busca inspiração para um novo personagem.
Atomic radiation, fading alien, cosmic ray, weird creatures. Suddenly, I am the Hulk. Is he a man or monster? Or is he both?
Inside all of us, there oft-times dwells a mighty and raging fury, as Stan wrote. And sure, we all think it's all just bubbling below the surface, isn't it? And it's all going to come out, and I'm going to wipe out worlds with my suddenly released furies, all these raging hormones and everything else. I mean, the Hulk is a pretty good analogy for puberty, really.
The Hulk is one of those ideas, it's so good because it's so obvious.
You were rooting for the monster. The Hulk was the hero of the story, and he was brute force personified. And again, for young adolescent boys in particular, the idea of someone with that much power is always a very enticing fantasy. People like seeing a monster break things, the most basic appeal of the Incredible Hulk.
The Hulk is a fantasy of the unconscious gone wild. He's the strongest one there is. The madder he gets, the stronger he gets. He's therefore the fantasy of kind of a superpower empowered by tantrums. And Hulk speaks like a little toddler. So any reader who picks up Hulk can feel superior to Hulk in terms of intelligence, but obviously inferior in terms of strength.
Poucas pessoas sabem que Hulk ficou verde por acidente.
Apparently, a superhero must have a costume. I know if I had a superpower, which isn't to imply that I don't, but if I had a superpower, I wouldn't run out and buy a costume immediately. However, I won't fight with the fans. Now, when I came up with the Hulk, here was somebody who was a monster. I couldn't think of a reason why a monster would go out and get himself a costume. Yet I knew that the fans want costumes, so I thought I'd do the next best thing. I'd color his skin a different color. In the first issue, I colored his skin gray, and when the book was printed, it was a mess because on some pages his skin was light gray, on some pages it was dark gray. So I looked around and thought, what color aren't we using on any of our other characters? And I realized we didn't have any green characters. Bingo. I said, let's make the Hulk green.
1941, Segunda Guerra Mundial. Uma experiência de liberação para milhões de mulheres que participaram dos esforços da guerra. Enquanto isso, na Ilha Paraíso, um grupo de mulheres vive sem homens. Um piloto americano sofre um acidente e sua rainha Hipólita decreta que uma guerreira retornará para a América com ele para lutar pela democracia e os direitos da mulher. William Moulton Marston, um brilhante psicólogo e inventor do detector de mentira, ainda tinha algo a provar.
Tell me about your dreams.
Ele tem um encontro com um editor de quadrinhos.
We want our characters to be good for young people, role models. What about a female hero? Are you nuts? You can't have a woman as a hero? Excuse me, ma'am. Have you got any books on Greek or Roman goddesses? She's got all the strength of a Superman, plus all the allure of a good and beautiful woman. And what's she called? Wonder Woman. What else?
Wonder Woman is an icon.
She's a goddess. You can't dispute the power.
Amazon princess who is in fact created by goddesses, and she is the classic hero. She lives in a lovely world, a world of women. She receives the call. The hero always receives the call. She must leave her wonderful place and go to a bad place to make that place better.
William Moulton Marston conhece o subconsciente humano e cria um personagem que agrada a garotos e garotas.
It's very important to remember that Wonder Woman was created by a psychologist, and he tapped into the collective unconscious of girls. And just say these words to any little girl: Amazon, princess, goddess, and just watch their eyes light up.
Wonder Woman, she is a female favorite.
Now, William Marston was an interesting character. He invented the lie detector, which was very much the same idea as Wonder Woman's magic lasso, which makes people tell the truth. And going through Wonder Woman is a whole idea about sisterhood and Paradise Island, of a kind of matriarchal Amazonian community of women who exist in a different kind of space to masculine codes. They're about sharing, they're about consideration, they're about traditional and even modern feminist values.
It's so girl-oriented. It's very important that Wonder Woman doesn't even have a male parent. Her two parents, one of them is, of course, the Virgin Queen Hippolyta. She molds a baby out of clay, and then the goddess breathes the breath of life into this baby, so that actually little Princess Diana has two mommies. Back in the 40s, when we thought feminists meant those women who wanted the right to vote in 1918, Wonder Woman was a feminist without anyone using the word. The whole point, always, over and over again, was that girls could indeed do everything boys could do, and if they couldn't do it, it was because they didn't have the proper training.
Female characters throughout the sort of general history of comics have mostly existed to be the one who got captured by the bad guy. They're the ones who have to get rescued. And it was only about 20 years ago that that started to change.
The original Wonder Woman was not as sexual, of course, as she's drawn now. Her costume has gotten briefer and briefer, and her bosom has gotten larger and larger.
There was also lots and lots of bondage imagery, and yet she wasn't the traditional female victim.
I think that it's very important to remember that there was a meaning to the bondage. Number one, Wonder Woman could not free herself if she were bound by men. And this is so symbolic. And of course, the other thing is, yes, you see Wonder Woman tied up a lot, and then you see her breaking her chains. I mean, this is a really powerful image of Wonder Woman coming out of her chains.
Most recently, she's been an ambassador who tries to teach humanism to the world at large, or what we call patriarch's world.
It was always my main thrust was to try to get her the degree of respect that Superman and Batman get, and that she's never really had.
Nosso próximo herói é da Grã-Bretanha. Uma estrela de Hollywood. E vamos voltar a 1970, anarquia no Reino Unido, corrupção punk e desordem, um pouco como hoje. Na verdade, ele é a criação de quadrinhos de maior sucesso dos últimos 25 anos. E de todos os nossos heróis, ele é facilmente o mais desagradável. Sem emoções, sentimentos, nem vida privada. Bem, ninguém é perfeito.
What are we going to do about litter? Flog 'em? Electrocution? Hanging? That's no deterrent. Space exile? Dino food? No. Blow them away!
Judge Dredd is the ultimate authoritarian.
He doesn't care who you are. If you broke the law, then he'll bust your head. A fascist dictator, really.
He's a vicious thug, but the law is on his side.
He's about the law, he's about guns, big bikes.
He can beat up everybody for the most pathetic offence.
I am the law.
That is his catchphrase. This astonishing bike, this steamroller with the most ludicrous front wheel you have ever seen in your life, but perfect for smashing down walls and saying you're all under arrest, lawbreaker. I mean, you could not get a better image than that. With Judge Dredd, it was a sense of really giving the readers what they really wanted, because we had tried heroes with emotion, with fear, with compassion, and to our surprise and even to our horror, they didn't like them. So we went for the opposite extreme, Judge Dredd.
Because I was born and raised in the South Bronx in New York City in the United States, is that we always had a great fear of police officers. But I think deep down inside, every little boy grows up thinking, I want to beat up the local bully because he is a bully. He deserves to be beaten to a pulp. Let me take the law into my own hands. And what better person than Judge Dredd and the entire police corps there to be able to do that in the name of justice. Judges were able to kick butt.
The costume of Judge Dredd is very unique and very special. Even 25 years on, it still sends a chill through people. The fascistic cop look.
Big boots for kicking people with. Mostly he's wearing leather and big gloves, knuckle dusters on his knuckles.
And Judge Dredd, he always wears a helmet. It's a bit like a medieval executioner's helmet. He remains anonymous throughout the strip. He never takes the helmet off because he is not a human as such. He's sort of impersonal. It's rather like a judge's wig, that it sort of depersonalises the character.
The whole visual look of Judge Dredd is based on the dark alter ego hero, the dark other, whether it's Batman, whether it's Darth Vader. There is something about those kind of characters that really grips the reader's imagination.
The city is the other star of the comic. It's this fantastic day-glow, multicoloured creation. 60,000 citizens typically live in one tower block, and they're sort of bored to the point of madness.
Mega City 1 is set in North America in 122 years in the future. We're meant to see democracy as being the heroes. That's what the people have lost in Mega City 1, and the judges and the justice system are the bad guys.
He's gradually, as the sort of comic has progressed, he's become more human. As he's interacted with citizens more, he's begun to feel their problems a bit more. He's sort of given way a bit to the democracy movement in the strip.
Not the character himself, but the setup is within, isn't afraid to look at and criticise itself and make fun of itself, where a great deal of the American comics take themselves very seriously.
There's a certain warning about what will happen if we go down into a sort of fascist, totalitarian state.
Nobody's innocent citizen. We're just here to determine the level of your guilt.
Muitos super-heróis são de grandes cidades, a maioria de Nova York, o lar de muitos dos grandes artistas e escritores de quadrinhos. Já reparou como os vilões sempre escolhem telhados perigosos para lutar com nossos super-heróis?
Through my research, I've discovered that 73.4% of superhero battles occur on rooftops.
Não disse? Nosso próximo herói também limitou suas lutas contra o crime aos telhados. Ainda luta. Ele nasceu numa pequena cidade no meio-oeste. 1934, Cleveland, Ohio. Tudo começou com uma noite em claro.
My head's gonna explode!
24 horas depois...
He's gotta have a costume and a big emblem on his shirt. Superhuman powers and a secret identity.
Nas próximas 4 horas, todos os editores da cidade o rejeitaram, exceto um.
Hey, boys, you really got something here.
Junho de 1938, nasce o primeiro super-herói dos quadrinhos do mundo.
When Superman was created, he was created in the height of the American Depression. So he was basically the man who could transcend any obstacle. And, you know, if you were weak, well, he was strong. He was the savior. He handled all the problems.
He's the perfect hero, in fact, because the hero is usually orphaned or abandoned, and that's Superman. His parents are of divine origin, and really his Kryptonian parents are semi-divine, you know, because they're so advanced. He's set afloat, he's discovered by other people, but he's different from those other people. And again, Superman hears the call. He must defend truth and justice in the American way. He's a classic hero.
There's something appealing about a guy who is that straightforward and that devoted to the cause he believes in, especially if it's a just cause. I mean, this is why Superman is devoted to the American dream.
I think he is probably, in America, one of the great original myths.
Nos últimos 60 anos, o super-homem se tornou o ícone dos quadrinhos. Para alguns, ele é como Moisés, abandonado quando criança, criado por pais adotivos que o salvam. Para outros, ele é o herói guerreiro clássico, seja resgatando esposas maltratadas como ele fazia no início, ou simplesmente salvando o planeta.
He is, after all, an immigrant who comes to America and in America becomes greater than he could have anywhere else. I mean, that's a classic story. That's the story of Siegel and Schuster's grandparents, you know, I mean, or possibly parents. it speaks very much to something that I think is a thread in most people. We're all displaced persons in one way or another, and I think that probably speaks to us.
You don't get a chance to be heroic in regular life, you know, at least not at that scale. I think people, if they actually took stock of what they've done their entire lives and look back at things they've done, they'd realize that they do little heroic things almost every day. It's something that is within human nature, which is also something that we admire so much. And we also, by nature, admire great men and great women and what they've accomplished. And our heroes allow us to do that. But we're always going to need that feeling that when it all comes down to the end, we as individuals, whether we're powered or not, can do amazing heroic things. And that's thematically all that we're doing in comic books.
People who don't read the comics still see the image of Superman. You know, it's in the dictionary.
I often say that the generation that grew up reading comic books runs the world now, which is a little bit scary.
Wonder Woman, Superman, everyone knows what that means. And even if they don't read comics, they understand the images.
It's heroism, it's heroics at its purest form. And that's why he's been around for so long. That's why he's going to be around for a lot longer.
Nosso próximo herói nasceu como mutante. Ele vem de lugar nenhum, como Clint Eastwood, percorrendo a cidade. Direitos, transgressões e permissões. 1963, o cérebro de Stan Lee, o maior criador de quadrinhos, está fervendo de ideias.
Who reads comics? Teen kids, of course. I must write a comic about teen kids. That'll be another one to talk to Jolly Jack Kirby about.
The card you are holding is the 8 of diamonds.
That's amazing.
No final da semana,
What's the next stage in human evolution, Uncle Stan?
a famosa Casa das Ideias, o cérebro de Stan encontra súbita inspiração.
That's the next step. A school for gifted youngsters. They're mutants with amazing powers.
The X-Men are a band of mutants whose special powers and abilities keep them apart from the rest of society. They tend to keep themselves hidden in places like this, but still manage to save the world. And there's even one that disappears. Particular characters I enjoy drawing are ones that are more extreme, can act more extreme. Wolverine obviously is good. He's got a distinctive hairstyle, lots of facial hair. He has these big claws. He's mean and moody, and he can be quite expressive.
He's that guy that the core audience is going to respond to. He doesn't take anything from anyone that he doesn't need, including disrespect. You know, he is his own man. He knows exactly who he is and what he wants out of life, which is basically to be left alone and to lead the kind of life that he wants to lead. They were very smart in giving him the ability to heal himself very quickly, but at the same time, feel what happened to him. So he's this brave warrior akin to a samurai who runs into battle knowing he's going to get hurt and possibly killed, but chances are not.
None of us truly believe we're going to die. Death is always something that happens to someone else, and that's true in our experience. Now, Wolverine can't die. He's got adamantium bones, he's got a mutant healing power, he can even smoke fags, and he's okay. So Wolverine is an indestructible creature, so therefore appeals to this very primal sense of ourselves, that we ourselves are indestructible too.
Os X-Men foram sucesso imediato e depois o Wolverine foi acrescido em 1975. Seu criador original, Stan Lee, tinha outro propósito em mente. Não queria apenas entreter, queria pregar a tolerância entre os diferentes povos e escolheu mutantes como metáfora.
As mutants, they would be different than normal people. Usually people who are different are disliked. Sometimes are feared or hated. I turned the X-Men into a group that was trying to help mankind, and yet the very people they were trying to help were hounding them and hunting them and hating them. And I thought maybe young people reading these stories would realize maybe we shouldn't hate people of different religions or different colors or different beliefs. So besides just being a comic book, I guess it was a little bit of a morality series, or at least I hoped so.
When Wolverine became a character in the series, he brought a much darker edge because he was an outcast among outcasts. He did not want to really be a team player. He was a loner, a tortured soul who had to get along in a group of tortured souls. And the fact that he was non-age specific, we weren't sure how old he was, weren't really sure of his background, gave him an air of mystery that the fans absolutely loved about Wolverine. Wolverine became the breakout star of the X-Men.
Say good morning to him in the wrong way and you're looking at your intestines lying on the floor.
It's one of those characters that we'd all like to be, well, you know, just go do something because he wants to, rather than because he's expected to, or kind of like the rebel within us all.
I think the thing that is really the universal appeal of Wolverine is that uncontrolled nature that we, fans especially, like to think that they have. That notion of don't mess with me because I can explode in any second.
Alguns super-heróis herdam grandes poderes e outros os recebem. Nosso próximo herói é um total perdedor, até ser promovido a super-herói. Mas o estranho é que ele permanece um perdedor nato. Stan Lee, o maior criador dos heróis de quadrinhos do mundo, está em uma cena.
I'm bored with superheroes who are perfect. Okay, Spider-Man, here's the deal. You're neurotic, compulsive, you have trouble with girls, you can't pay your rent, and your boss hates you.
So where's the fun in that? Compulsive? Me?
But kid, I can make you a hero. In doing superheroes, the main thing you have to do is create a superhero with an interesting superpower. And while I was thinking, I saw a fly crawling on the wall. Now, I have said this so often that for all I know, it might even be true. But I saw this fly crawling on a wall, and I thought, gee, that might be interesting to get a hero who can crawl on walls. So I decided to do that, but then I needed a name. So I thought, well, let's see, wall crawling man? Nah, that didn't sound good. Insect man? Nah. I got down the list and I hit Spider-Man, and somehow that sounded dramatic and mysterious. That was my name. But when I lettered it, I thought it looks a little bit like Superman, so I decided to put a hyphen between Spider and Man to make it look different. And it really bothers me now when people forget to put that hyphen in his name. I have gone on a hyphen crusade to educate the world. Spider-Man needs a hyphen.
Spider-Man is my favourite superhero. It's the one that really connects me back with my childhood. When I read comics as a kid, he was the one that I really liked. And to draw him as an adult was a real thrill. As I was sitting there drawing the Spider-Man comics, I could picture myself being 8 years old again, drawing pictures of Spider-Man for fun, and actually get paid to do it as a job. It was really good.
Spider-Man got his power because he was bitten by a radioactive spider.
Spider-Man, like Batman, is one of the purest characters ever created by comics. In fact, I do believe he was the first character to ever reflect the angst of comic books' core audience, the young male, you know, going through puberty, wishing that they were more powerful in every aspect of their life, smarter, stronger, faster, everything that the average comic reader was not, at least in their mind. Peter Parker was the same as them, but suddenly he's bitten by a radioactive spider, and you are a superhero. But you're still, underneath that, Peter Parker, geek boy at large. Beautiful, brilliant concept.
The cover of the first issue has that line where he's swinging across the rooftops and saying something like, "The world may mock puny Peter Parker, but they will tremble before the power of Spider-Man." Oh boy, does that speak to every teenage boy on Earth.
He's some guy that will never be anything, but something happens to him. And to the extent that it happens to him, he doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't decide to be a hero. He doesn't decide that he's going to save the world. He's going to go and make money. And his Uncle Ben gets killed. And he holds himself responsible for it. And then suddenly he realizes that he's got to do this And it has nothing to do with his own choice. He's just got to do this stuff. Well, that's a totally different kind of comic book character than you've ever seen before.
Struck a chord, as all Stan Lee's creations do.
Spider-Man was the first introspective superhero. I gave him so many thought balloons. Now, I did that of necessity because he was a loner, so there was nobody he could talk to. So I would show his thoughts. But that had never been done to that extent in comics before. And I think that's one of the reasons for his popularity. You felt you got to know him because you got to know his thoughts.
Spider-Man is very much an everyman kind of character. I think that's his greatest appeal, is that he's just this schmuck. He doesn't train all his life like Batman. He isn't born to it like Superman. He doesn't transform into another person like Captain Marvel. It's just so much stuff that we've never seen before, and that just runs, again, changed the whole shape of comics.
Aqui está um pensamento interessante. Stan Lee criou os X-Men, o Hulk e o Homem-Aranha, todos em menos de 2 anos no início dos anos 60. Seus quadrinhos venderam 2 bilhões de cópias no mundo todo, fazendo dele um dos escritores mais importantes do planeta dos últimos 50 anos. E agora, ao vencedor, aquele em quem você votou como seu favorito. Foi criado como a Mulher Maravilha e o Super-Homem no final dos anos 30. O mundo estava dividido numa guerra que poderia destruir a ordem existente. Período em que as pessoas estavam com medo do mundo não sobreviver. Tempo quando precisávamos de nossos heróis mais que nunca. 1939, Nova York. O editor que criou o Super-Homem tinha um grande sucesso, mas queria mais.
Listen, kid. I need another hit. You've got till Monday.
But all I've ever drawn are funny animals and naughty kids.
Jovem artista raciocinando.
Who is this guy? Leonardo da Vinci? Is he a mobster? And your machine shall have no other wings than that of a bat. I must be a creature of the night. The Batman.
Batman is a great concept. I think he's a great character. And I might add, Bob Kane, who created Batman, was a very close friend of mine.
As a child, he loved to go to movies. He was just so fascinated by the moving images up there on the screen. And also, as a poor kid from the East Bronx, it got him out of his surroundings and into a fantasy world. And Bob was very much, his whole life, I think, in this fantasy world. That was a big part of his life.
Com 10 anos, Bruce Wayne vê seu pai ser morto num assalto. Traumatizado, quando adulto, ele decide combater o terror dos criminosos. Sabendo o quanto eles eram supersticiosos e covardes, ele decide assumir a personalidade de um morcego. E assim nasce esta estranha figura das trevas, este vingador do mal, o Batman.
Well, there's something very alluring about it, and I think Batman had that edge. I think it was the mystery behind it, and he was a very strong character. He was a very dark character. He was never all, couldn't take him home to meet your parents sort of person. There was something a bit, the bad boy that all women like.
Either consciously or unconsciously, I think Bob used his own image. He was, as a young man, he was tall, dark, and handsome, and the chin also. I have pictures of Bob next to Batman, and the chin is identical. It's almost like he looked in the mirror and he drew himself. He, Bruce Wayne, and Batman are all one and the same, really.
Dark, brooding, serious individual. But the beauty of him is you get what he is immediately, and then you can get on with the stories. He's my favorite character.
Frank Miller escreveu uma das histórias definitivas da série Batman. Como muitos desenhistas de quadrinho, se apaixona pelo personagem ainda quando criança.
When I was 6 years old, I came across a comic book in a department store. It was a reprint by DC Comics of comics from the 1940s. It was all about Batman, who I'd never read. And I opened it up, and I just fell in. There's something about the artwork. It was really scary looking. And in it all was this robust, square-jawed icon, Batman, who was at least as scary as the Joker. I was just a little kid, but I read that. I'll never forget that moment. And that, to me, that experience is the purest version of what I'd like to do to a reader with my version of Batman.
O Batman de Frank Miller, chamado O Cavaleiro Negro Retorna, foi um grande romance gráfico voltado mais para os adultos. Ele levou o Batman, hoje com 60 anos e aposentado, de volta às suas raízes, às ruas sujas e escuras de Gotham City, para uma exibição final. Foi um sucesso instantâneo.
This was the early 80s. It was a very paranoid time in America, a sense of things being out of control. Crime was rampant by our standards. There was enough anger in me, and enough anger on these streets to make Batman make a lot more sense than he made in a long time.
O tema de espalhar a justiça a um mundo cruel existe em Batman desde 1939, quando a primeira tira foi criada por Bob Kane.
He was a humanitarian at heart, and I think that's why he made Bruce Wayne a humanitarian, and why Batman fights for the underdog. Audiences get something from this character, and I think it's something spiritual. He may look like the Dark Knight, but he's fighting for good. It's good versus evil.
Batman, to me, is the quintessential hero. He's the greatest invention ever. You know, Bob Kane was a genius. He's, to me, the purest form of what everyone tries to create in modern-day comics.
Excelsior!
I thought the whole cast was quite good.